If there was any recent fictional universe that absolutely nailed its first impression, it would be the 2007 sci-fi RPG known as Mass Effect. Whatever your thoughts of the game may be, one cannot deny how effortless Bioware managed to create a lived-in galaxy that the player felt compelled to know more about, exemplified by the inclusion of the Codex, this game's encyclopedia for nearly every species, item, and event within the game's lore. Selling a universe, however, is not just through how much history is made up, but presentation. Otherwise, Destiny's universe would be far more revered instead of a niche enjoyment. Bioware were clever in how to showcase their world through the tiniest of details that one may have missed. The driving factor, in my opinion, being the player's introduction to each race. Now, despite the 12 or so races introduced, the game's focus went to those that were a part of your squad, those being Asari, humans, Krogans, QUARIANS, and TURIANS. Each one playing a role in the economic, social, and political web of the galaxy, as well as demonstrating what their races are most known for through the actions of the characters you encounter, the most prominent being humanity, the only playable race in the campaign. While I never understood why we couldn't choose our race in Knights of the Old Republic, seeing as it wouldn't change anything story related, there is a reason for the human-only option in Mass Effect. For the player to experience the universe without it seeming forced or redundant, having them go through the eyes of a fish-out-of-water character is the best way to go. A classic storytelling structure used to fill the audience in through the lens of someone like them. This allows the universe to slowly drip-feed you everything within it by having a character mostly unfamiliar with the cultures of other races, meaning the player and character are simultaneously learning how everything works. Humanity, despite their relatively new status in society, is daring and easily adaptable, causing them to be watched cautiously by others. Yet they're also an amalgamation of every major race introduced, having the military prowess of the Turians, the headstrong nature of the Krogans, the short lifespan of the Solarians, the technological ambition of the QUARIANS, and the diplomatic skills of the Asari, as well as their general physiology. While the game never has an outright pro-human stance, it made sure to let them be an important figure within the galactic community by serving as a balanced mix of all cultures. It's why each primary human character represents a different aspect of this mix. Captain Anderson is the respected military man who understands the importance of galactic diversity. Ambassador Udina is a pro-human activist who, despite his best intentions, embodies the impatient, rude, and cold-hearted side of humanity. Ashley is the nationalistic, less open-minded of your human party members, while Kaidan is the example of scientific endeavors through the biotic experiments on human children, causing the journey of race recognition to be just as important to the player as it is to the characters. Which is why we see Commander Shepard looking at Earth in the game's first cutscene. They could have demonstrated a bizarre alien planet, but instead had you overlooking the planet you recognize as having a large spectrum of genetic diversity. Yet because we know what humans are like, this is when the game introduces the TURIANS. TURIANS are disciplined and pragmatic. They're known for their vast military presence, work ethic, and public service work. It's an integral part of their culture to put more of yourself for others and potential sacrifice for the greater good, which is why each prominent Turian introduced follows these values. Nihilus and Saren, the game's first visible Turians, are Spectres, highly respected, feared, and commended special operatives that make use of their militarized upbringing. Nihilus showcases the more calm, professional side of the Turian race, one that gets along with humanity, which isn't shared by many of his race. He sees potential in humanity, which is why he's the recruitment scout for Shepard's potential Spectre induction. His first line makes sure to paint him as one who is knowledgeable of starship travel, respects the work of pilots, and acknowledges good work performance, even if the person in question does not feel the same, traits known to be shared by those in military service. Saren represents the opposite point of view, a human-despising, cunning, and ruthless character that will do whatever it takes to get the job done. Serving as the game's primary antagonist, Saren is set up as a rival to the player, one who is always a step ahead, causing them to pick up the pieces of whatever mess Saren left, allowing the player to be aware of his ingenuity firsthand through the frustration of following his trail. Once you arrive on the Citadel, 3 Turians continue these traits. Garrus Vakarian, your squad's Turian and official bro of the galaxy, exemplifies the rasher side of the Turian culture, one who, like many growing up in discipline-heavy environments, tries to break free of restrictions and do things his own way, having grown tired of the red tape of the Citadel security force and wanting to make a difference through the individual actions rather than by the book's routines. He's not one to make hasty decisions, however, as he still respects those above him, mainly Shepard, and works well within your group, serving as the combat and technology expert. The last 2 Turians, Executor Palin and the Council Representative, represent the commanding figures of their society, straightforward, logic-based, and stubborn. They see no reason to do anything other than what can be done legally or through factual evidence, even if it can be infuriating like nothing else. Rounding out every aspect of the Turian culture leads us to the Asari. The prominent species of the galaxy, the Asari are deeply revered among the other species. They're generally known for their diplomacy skills, biotics, sexuality, and intelligence, which makes sense considering the first important on-screen Asari are the Council Representative, the Consort, and Liara. The representative maintaining the diplomatic superiority of the race by being placed center within the trio, and is usually seen holding the final word on all matters. The consort displays a much more sexual attitude, being known as a sort of mystical healer through her inspirational words and comforting sexual prowess, not to mention being the race seen prominently in Korra's den. Leading us to Liara, the youngest of all Asari seen in-game. Being a part of your squad, her knowledge of Asari culture and archaeological studies paint her as intelligent but naive, one who has not seen the vast world for what it truly is and can do due to her young age. A complete opposite to that of her mother, who is a matriarch, an Asari who has reached the final level of maturity and known for their wisdom, both philosophically and experience-wise. Out of all the races shown, the Asari are nearly everywhere. They're secretaries, political figures, soldiers, mercenaries, exotic dancers, business workers, and so much more, keeping in line with their non-gendered mating rituals which give them the traits of whatever species their parents are. Yet they're also no pushovers, having a biotic commando squad that is considered one of the best in the galaxy. Yet, if we're gonna talk about strength, there's one species that reigns supreme. The Krogan are a highly aggressive, battle-ready species that tends to care more about what to shoot than their own personal safety. When do you see them most of the time? As hired guns who don't care about the people they're shooting. They're just there for the violence, mainly due to the genophage, a hereditary biological weapon that made natural birth nearly impossible, meaning they hire themselves out because they believe they have no future. Your squad's Krogan, Rex, despite his centuries of mercenary work, represents the side of their culture that sees that potential future as reality, one where their skills in battle can be used for bettering their people instead of slowly facing extinction, yet isn't afraid to show the brutality of what their species is capable of. Every Krogan faced in the game other than Rex is out for blood and can easily kill you if you don't plan accordingly, letting the player experience their overwhelming strength through gameplay. Their health compared to others regenerates at a faster rate, meaning combat encounters can take longer than expected, as well as typically charging at the player with a melee attack causing them to either run away or think strategically with their on-hand powers to stop that advancement, forcing a different gameplay mentality than just pop and shoot with some powers thrown in. Through this interaction, the player can easily see how the other races fear a repopulated Krogan culture, causing a sympathetic understanding of the necessity for the genophage despite the overwhelming negative impact on their livelihood. Whether they know it or not, the fact that the Krogan are powerful in-game adversaries affects their narrative experience over the course of the trilogy. Because the player knows the danger of a small portion of Krogan compared to every other species, do they allow that strength to grow in numbers due to moral righteousness, or do they keep the status quo for logical reasons? The QUARIANS were most likely the trickiest for the team to pull off. Seeing as the only QUARIAN in-game is your squad mate Tali, there's no real way for the player to effectively see how their culture operates, meaning Tali serves as the megaphone for her entire race, given far more initial dialogue options on the Normandy than any other crew member. Yet through this choice, intentionally or not, the lack of any visible QUARIANS gives their nomadic lifestyle weight. Having other QUARIANS on the Citadel would negate the idea of a species that values its fleet and family more than anything in the world. It's once Tali serves on the Normandy and is recognized for her achievements, do more QUARIANS appear sparingly in the game's sequel. And considering their low immune systems and technological prowess play such an important role within their cultures, having various QUARIANS on station would ask the logical question, why aren't they at the fleet? While not explored in this game, it's seen in Mass Effect 2 when the more random QUARIANS met are ones that have an inability to return to their native fleet. As QUARIANS are considered lowlives by their races, their nomadic lifestyle leads them to become excellent scavengers and repairers of technology, not to mention being the creators of the Geth, the antagonistic artificial intelligence. Most of the Citadel races, such as the Volus, Elcor, and Hanar, are kept away until you arrive at the monolithic structure itself. Considering its role as the center of galactic culture, having the player spawn at the human embassy was a brilliant decision. As the player naturally begins to explore, they place the Volus and Elcor embassy directly next to yours, getting two vastly different looking species out of the way to keep the idea of a United Nations style society. Solarians, sadly, are mostly kept to the background despite their importance within the narrative. Until its sequel, Solarians aren't as fleshed out as one would hope, although they have enough detail to give a general overview of their race. Mostly known for their curiosity, fast-paced nature, and intelligence gathering, the majority of Solarians shown are members of their infiltration network, the STG, or are revolved around information, such as the Keeper scanning side quest, Mr. Analaeus on Noveria, and the Council representative discussing evidence and facts. While Bioware's wonderfully crafted universe was one that was filled with detail, it wasn't always kept in the codex. People often throw around the phrase show don't tell in regards to story beats and exposition, but often neglect the smaller details. How the traits of each respective race are conveyed not only through exposition, but through characteristics of its citizens, squad mates, and villains. When people claim Mass Effect as one of their favorite fictional universes, I'm not surprised in the slightest. Every inch of this universe was meticulously thought out to the last detail, from the weapons they carry to the differences between members of similar species. Building a universe is no easy task. What separates Lord of the Rings from most of its fellow fantasy universes is the extent that creator J.R.R. Tolkien went to make it as believable as possible. It's what allows Destiny and Dark Souls to have such highly followed lore channels dedicated to every aspect of their respective universes. If you want to make a fictional world, remember that the characters can do more than be charming or further the plot. They can give insight as to what their culture expects of them, how their views clash with those in and out of their race. You can have the walking death machine, but what does he represent? How does his culture influence his everyday actions? Bioware made sure to answer these questions, and that's why people will remember this universe for years to come.